Story number 1. Ladder Return. I was 40 minutes into a video call with a client from Austin, walking them through mood board revisions, when I saw Greg through my office window. He was crossing the street with my aluminum extension ladder balanced on one shoulder, the same one I'd borrowed 9 days ago to clean my gutters. I'd been meaning to return it but kept forgetting. He caught my eye and waved, then pointed toward the side of my house where the gate leads to the backyard. I nodded and gave him a thumbs up, mouthing, "Thank you," even though he probably couldn't see my lips from that distance. The client was still talking about color palettes, so I turned my attention back to the screen and figured Greg would just lean the ladder against the garage wall or maybe inside the gate. That's what most people would do. The call ran longer than expected. We ended up discussing typography for another 20 minutes, and by the time I closed my laptop, it was nearly 4 in the afternoon. The light outside had that flat grey quality it gets in Portland when the clouds sit low all day. I stretched and headed to the kitchen to make coffee. On my way back to the office, I passed through the hallway that connects to the garage, and that's when I decided to check if Greg had actually brought the ladder back or if I'd imagined seeing him. Sometimes when I'm deep in work, my mind plays tricks on me. But when I opened the door to the garage, the ladder was there, hung perfectly on its brackets along the far wall, not leaning against anything, not propped in a corner. Hung exactly where it belonged, which meant Greg had opened the garage door to put it away properly. I stood there for a moment trying to remember if I'd ever told him my garage code. I didn't think so. We weren't close. He'd lived across the street for maybe 2 years, and we'd had perhaps 5 conversations total, mostly about lawn care and garbage pickup schedules. He seemed nice enough. Older than me, probably mid-50s, lived alone, worked from home doing something with data analysis. Quiet guy. But I'd never given him my code. Maybe he'd guessed it. It was just 4 digits, the year I bought the house. Not exactly creative. Or maybe I had mentioned it once and forgotten. I do that sometimes, give people information and then completely lose the memory of it. I told myself it was fine. He was being helpful. Returning the ladder and putting it away properly was a considerate thing to do. I went back inside and was halfway down the hall when I smelled it. Cigarette smoke. Faint but unmistakable, that stale, clinging scent that gets into fabric. I stopped and breathed in again to make sure. Definitely smoke. But I don't smoke, and I hadn't had anyone in the house for over a week. My last visitor had been my sister, and she definitely didn't smoke. I walked back toward the garage, sniffing like an idiot, trying to trace where it was strongest. It seemed to fade as I moved, but it had been there. I was sure of it. Maybe Greg had stood in the hallway for some reason after putting the ladder away. Maybe he'd knocked on the front door and I hadn't heard him because of the call, and he'd smoked a cigarette on the porch before leaving. Except I never saw him come to the front door. The thought sat in my chest like a cold stone. I checked the front porch anyway. Nothing. No cigarette butts, no sign anyone had been there. I tried to get back to work but couldn't focus. Around 6, I ordered Thai food and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, watching the street through the window. Greg's house sat dark across the cul-de-sac. His car was in the driveway, but no lights were on inside. After I ate, I opened my phone and pulled up the doorbell camera app. I have one of those video doorbells that records motion, front, and back. I scrolled backward through the timeline until I found the timestamp from this afternoon, right around the time I'd seen Greg with the ladder. The backdoor camera caught him first, 3:21 in the afternoon. He came around the side of the house carrying the ladder, walked right up to the back door and tested the handle, not a casual brush. He gripped it and turned it deliberately, twice. The door was locked. He stood there for a few seconds, looking at the door, then turned and walked toward the side gate with the ladder. I watched it 3 more times. Each time, my stomach tightened a little more. Why would he try the back door? Why not just knock, or call out, or text me? We'd exchanged numbers once when a package of mine was delivered to his place by mistake. I changed the garage code immediately, went out there with my phone and reprogrammed the keypad to a random 6-digit number I saved in my notes app. Then I called a locksmith and paid extra for same-day service. A guy came out at 8 and rekeyed the back door. While he worked, I saved the camera footage to 3 different places: my phone, my laptop, and a cloud drive. After the locksmith left, I called the non-emergency police line and explained what I'd seen. The dispatcher took my information and said an officer would come by to take a report. He showed up around 9:30, a young guy who looked barely old enough to drive. He watched the footage on my phone, nodded, and wrote everything down in a little notebook. "Has he made any threats?" he asked. "No. I've barely spoken to him." "Did he try to force the door?" "No. He just tested the handle." The officer handed my phone back. "I understand why this makes you uncomfortable, but testing a door handle isn't illegal. Could be he was checking if you were home. Could be a lot of things. Best thing you can do is keep everything locked and maybe install more cameras if you're worried." He left, and I spent the next 2 hours checking every window and door in the house. I tested each lock twice, made sure the screens were secure, drew all the curtains. I kept thinking about the cigarette smell in the hallway, about Greg hanging the ladder in the exact right spot, about his hand on my back door handle. I didn't sleep well. Every sound pulled me halfway out of a dream: the heater clicking on, the house settling, a car passing on the street. Around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I grabbed it and saw the notification: garage motion detected. I opened the camera app with shaking hands, but the live feed showed nothing. Just the empty garage, the ladder on its hooks, my car parked in its usual spot. I watched for 5 minutes. Nothing moved. I told myself it was a bug, a false alert. The sensors do that sometimes when the temperature changes. I put the phone down and tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I lay there staring at the ceiling until the grey light of dawn started seeping through the curtains. At 6, I got up and made coffee. While it brewed, I checked the garage camera footage from 3 in the morning. Still nothing. Just the empty garage. But when I opened the back door to get the newspaper from the driveway, I saw them. Boot prints in the frost, leading from the edge of my driveway across the dead grass right up to the kitchen window. The screen had been removed and was leaning carefully against the house, right below the window frame. I stood there in my bathrobe, holding my coffee, staring at those prints while my breath made clouds in the cold air. Story number 2. Breakdown service. I was 40 minutes into the drive between Glendive and Circle when the rear tire blew. Not a gradual leak, just a sudden heavy thump that pulled the car hard to the right. I got it onto the gravel shoulder and sat there with the hazards on, staring out at the fog that had rolled in thick around 10:30 that morning. The road was empty. I hadn't passed another car in at least 15 minutes. I got out and looked at the shredded tire. The spare was in the trunk. I could change it myself, but my knees aren't what they used to be, and the jack in my car is one of those flimsy scissor types that makes me nervous on soft gravel. I pulled out my phone. No signal, not even one bar. That wasn't unusual out here, but it meant I'd have to either change it myself or wait for someone to pass by. I popped the trunk and was reaching for the spare when I heard the engine. A tow truck came out of the fog behind me, already slowing down, hazards blinking. It pulled onto the shoulder about 20 feet back. The driver got out, a guy maybe in his 50s, wearing a stained blue jacket and a ball cap. He walked up with his hands in his pockets, casual, like we'd planned to meet here. "Saw your flashes," he said. "Looks like you need a hand." I nodded, relieved, but also a little confused. "Yeah, blew the tire." I didn't think anyone was behind me. "I wasn't," he said. "Someone must have called it in on CB. I monitor channel 19 when I'm out here." He glanced at the tire. "I can get you sorted. Won't take long." It made sense, I guess. Truckers still use CB radio on these rural routes. Maybe someone had passed me right before the blowout and radioed it in. I told myself that was reasonable. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't seen anyone, not for miles. He got his jack and a lug wrench from the truck. I stood a few feet away, still trying to get a signal on my phone. Tilting it in different directions like that ever helps. He worked quickly at first, getting the car jacked up, pulling off the shredded tire. Then he ducked underneath the car with a flashlight. "Just checking the undercarriage," he said. "Make sure nothing else got damaged." I heard metallic scraping. Then a pause. Then more scraping, deliberate and slow. It went on longer than it should have. I crouched down to see what he was doing, but he was angled in a way that blocked my view, and when I moved, he shifted too, like he didn't want me looking. "Everything okay under there?" I asked. "Yeah, just a second." The scraping continued. My phone still had no signal. The fog pressed in around us, thick enough that I couldn't see more than 30 feet in either direction. No cars had passed. I started to feel the quiet in a way I hadn't before. The kind of quiet where you realize how alone you are. He finally slid out from under the car and stood up, brushing off his hands. "You're all set," he said. He lowered the jack and tightened the lug nuts on the spare. The whole thing had taken maybe 12 minutes, but it felt longer. "What do I owe you?" I asked. $200. I blinked. "For a tire change, call-out fee," he said, "plus labor." "It's standard for Roadside." It wasn't standard. It was triple what it should have been. But I was stuck on the side of the road with no phone signal and a guy who'd just been under my car doing something I couldn't see. I reached for my wallet. "Cash only," he added. I opened my wallet. I had $73. "I don't carry that much cash," I said. "I can Venmo you or—" "No apps," he said flatly. "There's an ATM in Vida, about 5 miles up. You can grab it and swing back." I looked at him. He was standing between me and the driver's side door, not blocking it exactly, but close enough that I'd have to step around him. His expression hadn't changed. Still casual, still calm. "Or," he said, "I know you live over on 8th Street in Glendive. We can settle up later if you want to just head home." My stomach dropped. I hadn't told him where I lived. I hadn't told him my name. The only thing he could have seen was my car, and my address isn't on the registration in a visible spot. "How do you know where I live?" I asked. He shrugged. "Small town. I've done work around there before. Glendive isn't that small." And I'd never seen his truck before. I made a decision. "I'll hit the ATM," I said, moving toward the car door. He stepped aside, but slowly. I got in, locked the door immediately, and started the engine. He stood there watching me, hands back in his pockets. I pulled onto the road. The spare tire thumped unevenly, and I could feel something else, a vibration that wasn't there before, but I didn't care. I just drove. In the rearview mirror, he stood on the shoulder, getting smaller in the fog, not moving toward his truck, just watching. Vida was 6 miles, not 5. The gas station was the only thing open. I pulled up right next to the attendant's window, close enough that someone inside could see me clearly, and got out. My hands were shaking. I went inside and asked to use the phone. The attendant, a woman in her 60s, pushed the cordless across the counter. "You okay?" "I need to call the sheriff," I said. I described what happened. The truck, the guy, the way he'd known my address. She listened, then frowned. What the truck looked like? White, older model Chevy. Had some company name on the side, but I didn't catch it. Her face changed. "That truck was reported stolen 2 days ago, from an auction up near Ritchie." I felt cold. I gave the sheriff's dispatcher the location and stayed inside the station until a deputy arrived 23 minutes later. He took my statement, looked at my car. When he crouched down near the rear wheel, he went quiet for a moment, then stood up. "Your brake lines have fresh scratches on them," he said. "Someone tried to cut into them. Didn't go all the way through, but another few miles of driving and you might have had a problem." I thought about the scraping sounds, the way he'd stayed under the car, the way he'd wanted me to drive back to him with cash. The deputy called it in. They never found the truck. I still have the business card the guy left on my dashboard. It has a company name, High Plains Roadside, but no phone number, no address. I looked it up later. There's no business by that name registered in Montana. I drove home on the spare, keeping under 40 the whole way, and didn't touch the brakes unless I had to. Story number 3, closing shift. I was finishing inventory in the stockroom when I noticed him still browsing near the camping section. The rain had been drumming steadily on the metal roof for the past hour, that constant white noise that makes you feel sealed off from everything outside. It was 15 minutes past closing. Thursday nights were always dead, especially in weather like this, and I'd already flicked the sign and dimmed half the lights. He was looking at the tent displays, running his hand along the waterproof fabric in a way that seemed too careful, too studied, well-dressed for our usual crowd. Button-down shirt, nice slacks, leather shoes that clicked on the linoleum when he moved. Most people who came in for camping gear wore fleece and hiking boots even in town. I walked over with my clipboard, trying to look busy rather than impatient. Finding everything okay? We're actually closed now, but I can ring you up if you're ready. He smiled, apologetic but not rushed. Sorry, lost track of time. I do have a question though, if you don't mind. He gestured around the store. What kind of alarm system do you use here? And those locks on the doors, are they standard commercial deadbolts? It was a strange question, but not completely out of nowhere. I'd gotten weirder ones. Yeah, pretty standard setup. Why do you ask? I'm opening my own retail space over in Milburn, he said, pulling out his wallet to show me a business card. I didn't read it closely, trying to learn from established stores in the area. Security's a big concern, you know. Lots of expensive inventory. That made sense. I'd been assistant manager for only 3 weeks, still getting used to people treating me like I had answers. We've got motion sensors and door contacts. The alarm company monitors it remotely. Honestly, it's probably overkill for a strip mall, but corporate requires it. Smart, he said, nodding. And you're here alone at closing? Usually there's 2 of us, but someone called out sick. I didn't know why I was telling him this. Maybe because he seemed genuinely interested, professional. I don't mind. Gives me time to catch up on inventory without customers interrupting. He bought a small LED lantern and a package of batteries, made small talk while I rang him up, mentioned the rain, said he hoped I didn't have far to drive. I walked him to the front door, locked it behind him, and watched through the glass as he opened an umbrella and headed toward the parking lot. His sedan was parked 3 spaces down from the entrance. The register count took longer than usual because I kept losing track of the 20s. My brain felt fuzzy from the long day and the sound of rain. It was almost therapeutic, that constant drumming overhead, except it made every other sound disappear. I couldn't hear traffic from the main road or the hum of the strip mall's shared HVAC system. Just rain. I was bundling the cash into the deposit bag when I glanced at the security monitor we kept in the office. 4 camera feeds, black and white, cycling every 10 seconds. The front parking lot view came up, and I saw his sedan still there, interior light on. He was sitting in the driver's seat, facing the store. Probably checking his phone, I thought. Answering emails before driving. People did that. I finished the deposit, locked it in the safe, and started shutting down the computer. The monitor cycled through the cameras again. Front lot. His car hadn't moved. He was still sitting there, motionless, facing our entrance. The rain seemed louder suddenly. Or maybe I was just noticing it more because I was paying attention to other sounds now, trying to hear past it. I told myself I was being paranoid. He was just sitting in his car. That wasn't a crime. Then I heard the back delivery door handle jiggle. Just once. A single metallic rattle, then nothing. I froze with my hand on the keyboard. The back door was in the stockroom, past the sales floor, through the warehouse area where I'd been working an hour ago. It was solid steel with a deadbolt and a crash bar. No window. I checked it when I locked up the front. I was sure I had. The security panel on the wall next to me showed all green except one yellow light. Motion detected. Stockroom. My mouth went dry. I stared at that yellow light, willing it to turn green to mean nothing. Maybe something had fallen off a shelf. We had unstable stacks of sleeping bags back there. Or a mouse. We'd had mice before. The light stayed yellow. I pulled out my phone and looked at the parking lot through the office window. His car was still there. Interior light off now. I couldn't see if he was inside anymore. My hands were shaking when I pulled up the security company's number. They had a panic button feature, a silent alarm that went straight to police dispatch without any noise on our end. I'd never used it. Never thought I'd need to. I pressed it. The confirmation text came through immediately. Police notified, estimated response time 6 minutes. 6 minutes was a long time. I stood up and looked at the office door. It was hollow core, the kind that wouldn't stop anyone who really wanted in. The lock was just a button on the handle. I grabbed the metal shelving unit next to the filing cabinet and dragged it across the floor as quietly as I could. It scraped anyway, a horrible screech that made me wince. I wedged it against the door and piled boxes of receipt paper on the shelves to add weight. Then I crouched below the desk and watched the monitor. The camera feed cycled. Stockroom empty. Sales floor dark. Front entrance locked. Parking lot, his car still there. Stockroom again, and this time I saw movement. Just a shadow crossing the frame, too quick to make out details. The rain kept drumming. I couldn't hear anything else over it. Couldn't hear footsteps or breathing or doors opening. Just that endless percussion on the roof. The sales floor camera showed a figure now, moving between the aisles. Tall, deliberate, checking behind displays. Looking for something. Looking for me. I pulled my knees to my chest and tried to keep my breathing quiet. The monitor cycled again. He was closer now, near the camping section where he'd been browsing earlier. He knew the layout. He'd studied it while I was helping him. My phone buzzed. Text from the security company. Police on site. I heard shouting then, muffled through the walls and the rain. Male voices, authoritative. More shouting. Then footsteps in the stockroom, fast and heavy. A knock on the office door. "Police, you can come out." I moved the shelving unit and opened the door. An officer stood there, older guy with kind eyes. "You okay?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He walked me through the sales floor to the front entrance. 2 other officers were searching the building with flashlights. One called out that the back door had been pried open, the frame splintered around the deadbolt. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The parking lot lights made everything look orange and unreal. His sedan was still parked 3 spaces down. An officer was searching it with a flashlight. The driver's door hung open. Engine compartment still ticking as it cooled. "Nobody inside the vehicle," she called out. "But you need to see this." We walked over. She was photographing the passenger seat with her phone. Spread across it were printed pages. Photos of our store, the layout, the office, the safe. Angles I recognized from our security cameras, screenshots someone had taken and enhanced. And on the dashboard, a blank key, partially filed down, metal shavings still clinging to the cuts. The older officer looked at me. "You said he asked about your alarm system?" "Yes," I whispered. "Did he ask anything else? About your schedule, about when you're here alone?" I thought back to the conversation, to all the small talk that had seemed so normal. He asked if I had far to drive home. The officer nodded slowly. "We're going to need you to come to the station and give a full statement. And we'll have someone stay with the store tonight until we can get that back door secured." They never found him. Not that night. His car was registered to a false name and address. The business card he'd shown me didn't exist. The security company pulled the footage, and we watched him browse for 27 minutes before I approached him, studying every corner of the store, testing door handles when he thought the cameras weren't pointed at him. I still worked there. Different shift now, never closing alone, but sometimes when it rains and I'm in the stock room doing inventory, I hear that sound underneath the drumming, that metallic jiggle of a handle being tested, and I stop counting and listen, trying to separate real sounds from memory, never quite sure which is which.